Hi, this is Kelly from Freebie Finding Mom, and today I'm going to share with you a recipe for a cinnamon roll apple pie. I found this recipe actually in a video a couple weeks ago, and I saw it. I thought, man, that looks like a really great recipe to try for the upcoming holidays. So I gave it a shot on Friday. So I have a finished version to show you, but we're also going to just make one live here today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started making our cinnamon roll apple pie. Like I said, I saw this recipe just a couple of weeks ago, and I thought that looks like such a good variation from just a traditional apple pie. I'll just run through the ingredients real quick with you. It's, like I say, it's really simple, and quite honestly, it's pretty inexpensive too. It requires just 2 8-count cans of cinnamon rolls with icing. And so I have that, and then it also just takes about 5 to 6 medium-sized Granny Smith apples, and a half a cup of granulated sugar, a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and a tablespoon of cornstarch. And that's it. So what I'm first going to do is go ahead and, well, the first step is just washing, peeling and slicing our apples. I just went ahead and did that. So that part is done. Next, we're going to combine our cinnamon, our sugar, and our cornstarch. That's going to be the mixture we're going to coat our apples with. So let me grab a bowl, and then we'll mix that together after I slice up my apples. All right. I'm also going to share with you, I'm hoping to in the next week, if possible, I really want to make my pumpkin cheesecake, because I think that would be something people may want to try for Thanksgiving. So, like I said, right now we've peeled our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm using 5 Granny Smith apples. Just peeled them, and now I'm just going to slice them up. And like I said, I want to share my pumpkin cheesecake recipe. I make it, I would say, about every Thanksgiving. There has been a couple where I didn't host or go to anybody's house or anything, so I didn't make it. But I will say it's something that my husband asks for now every year, because it's like his new favorite dessert. So it's really good. And like I say, it's a good variation for people. If you're like everybody, most people like pumpkin pie, but it's sometimes, especially when you go to multiple people's houses for the holidays, sometimes it's like, you know, it'd be nice if they had another variation from like a standard apple pie or a standard pumpkin pie. So that's why I like to try to find, let me slice this up a little thinner, you know, variations for kind of the traditional recipes we use at the holidays. You decide how big you want your slices. I checked multiple recipes online as far as how thin or how thick people were slicing their apples. I have a tendency to like to leave a little peel on, you'll see. You know, and it's funny, I like to do that simply because I feel like it looks more homemade or more like organic versus store-bought where everything just looks perfect. So, like I said, you decide your thickness. I've seen where some people share the recipe, they had really thin apple slices, and others did quite thicker. So I'm probably doing more of a medium size of apple slice. And you just decide. Knowing the thickness of your apple, you'll have to obviously watch to make sure they, you know, are baked. With that being said, I've also preheated my oven to 350 degrees. This apple pie, once we get it assembled, is going to take about 40 to 45 minutes. You'll just want to watch it and make sure just that the center is done. And then what I was going to say also is that, like I said, I made a version of this on Friday. I just didn't bake it until this morning, and just so that it would be fresher. And my son has been waiting to try this thing ever since Friday night, and so hopefully he loves it. So stay tuned. My little taste tester is supposed to be down here in a little bit to try out this recipe, the finished version anyways. One thing I will say is, like I said, I checked out multiple recipes for this recipe, and which, by the way, is going to be up on the blog as soon as I finish this video. I'm going to share the post. And I will, of course, put a link to it at the bottom of this post here on Facebook, so you can find it easily. And what I will say is that when I was checking other recipes, not only was there variation in a number of things, actually. One of the things they varied on was obviously the size of how thick they cut their apples. Like this, like I said, I consider that kind of a medium thickness. Maybe a little on the thicker side, but I don't know. I like them, like I said, a little bit thicker and chunkier than just really thin slices. But if you like something more like this, thin of a slice, that's perfectly fine as well. But what I was saying is I found I bought just a standard size, cinnamon roll. I saw other recipes where they use the cinnamon grands, the larger size cinnamon roll, which I like that too. So I may actually try that next time. But so you can use either size. Another thing I saw was variation in also how they made the crust. What you'll see with this when it's called cinnamon roll apple pie, what's basically is a cinnamon roll is essentially your crust, your bottom layer and your top layer. With that being said, I saw variation with how people were assembling the cinnamon rolls together for the crust. So I did it one way on Friday, and live here I'm going to try it another way. So we'll see how it goes. One of the ways I tried it, which is how I shared the recipe on the blog, which worked out fine, was actually assembling, and this is the way my friend Erica does it too, is assembling the cinnamon rolls into a circular shape on like a cutting board or just on the kitchen surface, and then rolling them together and forming kind of a crust that way, and then laying it on top of our pie pan. I'm using a disposable one only because we're going to gift the second pie away, so otherwise I'd just be using my standard pie pan. So with that being said, I saw two different ways. I saw people, they rolled it together on the kitchen top and then transferred it over to their pie pan. And then I saw and that's the way I did it Friday, and that was fine. And that's the way I share it in the post on the blog. But I will say, I am going to try another way that I saw it online too, just to try another alternative, is to actually assemble the crust inside the pie pan. And after you've rolled them out individually. So I'll show you what I mean if that's confusing. But I thought that sounded interesting, and it may work better because transferring it over, some of my cinnamon rolls did come apart a little bit, but it worked fine if that's the way you want to do it. If you want to follow the recipe on the blog just as it is, that's perfectly fine. But like I said, we're going to try the other way today just to take a look and see how it goes. But I will tell you this recipe smells delicious because I just pulled it out of the oven, and I will show you the variation. It's funny because I do like cooking, and I do like making desserts, and I probably like making desserts more, probably. But the two things I would say that kind of frighten me or scare me the most when it comes to dessert making is pie crust and icings. And sometimes for me they can go really well, and sometimes they don't. So there's just not a lot of in between when it comes to pie crust and icings for me. So that's another reason I love this recipe, is because they're both done for me. Basically, I mean, here is your crust, and here in here is a icing cup, and you're going to use those icing cups at the end for your topping, basically. All right, we're about done cutting up our apples here. I'm glad I peeled them in advance. That's done. You may use all of these, you may not. I used 5 full medium-sized Granny Smith apples with my other pie I made Friday, so we'll probably use most of those, if not all of them. So let me clean this up. So now we're going to put together our mixture, our cinnamon sugar cornstarch mixture. And that's what we're going to put on top of our apples. So we're going to put that mixture on top of our apples. We need a 1/2 cup of sugar. Okay. Also, if you will, if you've ever tried this recipe, I'd never heard of it, but then after I started talking to different people about it, they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of cinnamon roll apple pie. So if you've tried something like this, leave a comment. Let me know how it turned out. Also, let me know if you've tried this type of a recipe before, what worked for you when it comes to, like I say, the crust or like the slicing of the apples, like what variation, maybe you put something else like a nutmeg or something inside too. So let me know what worked for you in your recipe, if there's any variation. Yeah. Okay, we're going to do 1/2 cup sugar on top. And then we're going to do a teaspoon of cinnamon, ground cinnamon. And then we'll do a tablespoon of cornstarch. Can you see that? There you go. Teaspoon of ground cinnamon. And then a tablespoon of our cornstarch. I'm curious to see how rolling out the crust this way works. I think it might work even better, but I don't know that to be true. So we'll give it a shot. 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. So we use sugar, a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a tablespoon of cornstarch. And then we're just going to make sure that our apples are mixed well and then coated nicely. Yummo. So like I say, as soon as this video is over, you can hop on over to Freebie Finding Mom because I'm going to make this post live. And there you'll see even more detailed pictures. You'll also see the complete recipe. And it will be at the top of our homepage because I'm going to have it be the first post today, this morning. And if you still are having any issues finding it, I will of course put a link in this Facebook post too once I'm done with this video. Man, I wish you could smell this. It smells so good. Cinnamon and sugar and apples, it's so delicious. There we go. It's pretty well coated to me. Like I said, I really hope this week I can get that pumpkin cheesecake recipe together for you to share for you because I think it'll be something that a lot of people are going to want to try for Thanksgiving. So I will try to get that up there this week if I can. That looks pretty well coated. And I'll bring this closer so you can see what they look like here. See, that is our sliced apples coated with a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, also a tablespoon of cornstarch and a teaspoon of cinnamon. So that is coated. Let me clean this up here real quick because I'm going to use this to roll out our cinnamon rolls. All right. There's that. So we've done the first couple steps. Now, and I will say also, in this recipe is that we're actually going to slice. You're buying 8-count containers of cinnamon rolls because you're going to use one for the bottom. You're going to buy 2 of them, one for the bottom crust, one for the top crust of your pie. You're going to slice these cinnamon rolls in half. So essentially, you're going to really have 32 because you're going to have 16 and 16. But you'll see what I mean here in a second. And you are going to save the icing cups because that is what you're going to coat. Or drizzle, I say coat because we like icing and I use a lot of it for my pie. But basically just drizzle it on top after your pie has been cooled. Once it comes out of the oven. As I mentioned before, we're preheating our oven right now to 350 degrees. It's actually already preheated because I baked the other pie this morning. I know my taste tester is getting hungry, so I'm trying to kind of hurry today. But I almost let him eat it in advance, and I thought, no, I want to show you a completed version before I had a big chunk of it missing. So there we go. There's that. There's our icing. All right, so like I said, we're going to cut these in half. You know, and I thought, I was a little worried. I thought, is it going to be hard to cut them in half? Because I didn't know if, I don't know, sometimes dough can be fun to work with and sometimes not so fun. But on Friday anyways, we'll see how they work today. But on Friday anyways, they didn't cut too bad. They were not too bad to cut in half. So like I said, you're going to buy 2 of these cinnamon roll cans because you are going to use one for the top crust and one for the bottom crust. like I said, the next time I make this recipe, I'm going to use the cinnamon grands. Not that this didn't turn out perfectly fine. I just liked the way the grands looked at the end when I saw a video where somebody used the cinnamon roll grands. I liked how big they looked on top, just visually. I'm sure they're both gonna taste really good. They probably are very similar as far as difficulty working with, but I just liked how the top looked with the larger cinnamon rolls at the end. But I wanted to try it with this recipe, with using these smaller ones first today. And like I said, I made it on Friday and it looks perfectly fine. Just a minute, sweetie. It's my taste tester. And let me finish my video, okay? I'll be right with you. But I know he's gonna be hungry, so I will hurry. Okay, so here we have our cinnamon rolls cut in half, at least the bottom layer. And then, like I say, on the recipe online, it'll tell you to go ahead and roll them, put them in a circle, roll them out, and then kind of, you know, form them as a crust, which I did on Friday, worked fine. What I'm going to try to do today is another variation I saw, which is rolling out each of these cinnamon rolls individually and then assembling them in my pie pan. So, so what we're going to do is just grease your pie pan with nonstick cooking spray, and then you're going to go ahead and put your cinnamon rolls in there after we've rolled them out a little bit. Do a little quick spray. Okay. Looks pretty good, right? Yeah. There we go. Okay. Got that. One thing it doesn't say in the directions, in mine online or on any directions I saw, quite honestly, was to use a little flour. That's just my personal choice. It just seemed to make it a little bit easier to work with. But you know how comfortable you are working with dough, and if it's working for you, then maybe you don't need the flour. But I think just a little bit of flour might help it. A little bit. Grab my rolling pin. So like I said, I'm going to roll these just a little bit, not make them too thin, just roll them a little bit. See what I mean? Just a little bit. Just kind of pat them down. And then I'm going to just push them in the pie pan like this, and then I'm going to put them all the way around, the bottom, the sides, and that's going to be my crust. So like I said, you can do it this way, or you can make it the other way, which is just making them in a circle, form them on a circle here, and rolling them out like a dough. And then transferring that circle over to your pie pan. Maybe I'll put this here. You could probably see it better here. The stove's not on, so you can probably see that better there. And then you're just going to kind of push them together, making sure there's no pockets or anything like that. Just filling up any empty spaces, any holes in your crust. And then you're going to do the exact same thing for your top layer. You just push that one out a little bit more. There we go. I'm just kind of pushing them together, like I said. You can kind of see what I'm doing here. Creating just an edge there. So it's your little crust. I just love the idea of this. It's funny, when my husband saw me making it on Friday, he didn't know what I was making. He came down and he said, I see apples, so are you making apple pie? And he said, what are those specks? Are those chocolate chips? I said, no, they're cinnamon rolls. He said, oh, that can't be bad. So I'm like, no, it's going to be amazing. So, it smells so good. The finished one that I made already smells so good, I can't wait to try it. Especially if you put a big scoop of vanilla ice cream on top. Not that you have to, because I drizzled enough icing on there to make my son happy. With that being said, since you do have 2 containers of the cinnamon rolls, you will obviously get 2 containers of the icing. You won't need that much of it for this one pie, but if you're an icing family like my family is, I used a lot of it. So I used probably 1 2/3 of another container for our top, but you'll see that if I was making this for guests or something, I would have just used one because it just looks presentation-wise a little bit better, more like a drizzle rather than a coating of icing, which you'll see, which is kind of more like what mine looks like now. But that's okay, because that's what we like. A little more icing. I think that helped. Just putting a little bit of flour on there, I think, helped. Let's see. So I've got my rim made, my crust. Hope you can see that. Okay. And now I'm just going to try to see if I have enough here to fill up the center. You know, it's funny, when I cut these in 16, I thought, oh, that's going to be too many. I don't need to cut them in half. It's not, my pie pan's not that big. But once I started, you know, layering them because you didn't want any gaps in your crust, it actually did, 16 ended up working out perfectly with the one I made on Friday. So. Like I said, I love making desserts, but the things that scare me most about desserts are the crust when you make a pie, or a quiche or something, but the crust and homemade icings. You know, I have also a recipe for, which I'm going to probably share it at some point. I have a recipe for a banana cake with caramel icing. Very delicious, but the icing, it's like, sometimes I get it just right, and other times I keep adding more, you know, I have to use convection or sugar, or there's just not the right balance, and so sometimes it works for me and sometimes it doesn't. So there we go. I think I'm gonna need to stretch one of my crusts a little bit. I'll bring this over, maybe you can see it better here. Here. But that kind of worked out, I think. I've got just a little hole right there in the center. I'm gonna try to squeeze them together there. A little bit here, and just kind of pat it out. That's the thing that's great about dough. It's forgiving. You can manipulate it a little bit here to kind of get it to, you know, fit the way you want. I think I like this approach better. Like I said, you do what works for you. If you're like, no, Kelly, I'm used to rolling out crust first and then transferring to pie pan, then I say, great, go ahead and follow the recipe on the blog as is. But if you want to try this alternative, this was pretty fast, as you can see. And you'll see here, I'll show you here. I'll get a close up for you. There's really not many holes here. It really does come together nicely like a real crust. You know, like you rolled out a crust. So this is my cinnamon, I hope you can see that, my cinnamon roll bottom layer crust. It was just 8 cinnamon rolls we cut in half, and I rolled them out a little bit with a little bit of flour. And so that's my bottom layer, and that's it. And then, yeah, that's it. So then I'm going to take my apples that we have coated. If you recall, all we did here was slice, peel, and wash, of course, 5 medium-sized Granny Smith apples. We coated them in a half a cup of granulated sugar, along with a tablespoon of cornstarch and a teaspoon of cinnamon. We coated them well. We're just going to dump them right on top of our cinnamon roll pie crust here. And then it's going to be about done. We just have to make our top layer, and that is it. So if you're someone who's, like I honestly always was nervous about making pies, like I said, for the reason of the crust, if that is the reason that you've hesitated to make a pie, let me reassure you that you should try this one, because so much of the scary part, I guess, or the concern is done for you really by, buying the cinnamon roll containers themselves. And like I said, you decide how full you want your pie. I like a lot of apples. Like I said, I also like to leave some of the peel. You'll see I left a little bit of the peel on them. I like it that way. Like when I make mashed potatoes or something, I like to see a little skin. Same with if I make a pie, I like to see a little bit of the peel. It just feels a little more homemade and organic that way for me. But you do what you prefer. Just kind of trying to make it fairly even. So when we put our crust on top, it won't have any big bumps or anything. And I don't want to use that piece. I do want to not lose any of that yummy sugar and cinnamon mixture, so we're going to pour that on top. I will bring this to the camera so you can get a better view. This looks so good. this is what it looks like now before we've put our top layer on. Hope you can see that pretty good. Looks great. Now I'm just gonna leave this here again because I think that seemed to work pretty well. And then we'll roll our top layer. Clean this up a little bit, even though I'm gonna do the same thing again. And we're gonna go ahead and open up our second container. Hopefully, I bought Pillsbury, but of course you can use any brand. Hopefully you have some coupons when you buy it. I did, so makes it, and like I said, so this recipe is pretty inexpensive too because, I did that quickly, now it's probably not gonna come off easily. Because besides, I should have watched what I was doing better, because besides the buying these 2 containers of the cinnamon rolls, other than that, you probably all have the sugar. You'll probably have, you may or may not have cornstarch at home, but that's really inexpensive to purchase. Besides the sugar, the cornstarch, and you'll probably have cinnamon at home, I would imagine. So with that being said, you just have to buy 5 to 6 Granny Smith apples. Use my knife, I think, because unfortunately I peeled that pretty quick. There we go. And that's it. So this recipe is pretty inexpensive. So if you need to make a couple of pies for the holidays, it's not going to cost you too much, which I like. So we have our 2 icing cans, which we will use at the end. After our pie has cooled, we'll drizzle the icing on top. I will say, you'll see here in a minute, or in a few minutes, when I show you my finished version, I didn't wait till it completely cooled, but you don't have to. I didn't because I knew it was just for us, my family that is. If I was making this for a presentation, I'd be a lot more concerned with making it look nice and has a nice even drizzle on it. Because it's just for us, I went ahead and just iced them right away. Oops, first we have to cut our cinnamon rolls in half. I was gonna say, we need 16 of these to make our top layer. And our oven has already been preheated to 350 degrees. I've seen recipes that say 40 minutes, I've seen recipes that say 45, and others that said 50. So I think mine was probably more like 45, I would say, minutes. But you'll know how fast your oven bakes. Just want to watch it, just make sure the middle is cooked through thoroughly. There we go. So we've cut our cinnamon rolls in half. We're going to roll them out again here. I'll just put a little bit of flour down. Help it a little bit here for the top layer. I hear my son. He is ready to be a taste tester, that is sure. The other thing I will say is I'm going to probably try to have all the sides be the same. I'm going to have this side showing. I don't know if you can see this side showing, just so they all are consistent, because not all of the, since we cut them in half, not all of them have like this coating of cinnamon on them. Only 8 of them do. So I'm going to use the flip side because all of them have the chips of cinnamon in them. Again, it's your preference. I just want to look a little bit more uniform. So I'm going to use the side that has just the little specks of cinnamon in them. And I'm doing the exact same thing with this as I did on the bottom. I'm doing the same on the top. I'm just kind of connecting them, kind of overlapping them to make a crust. You'll just make sure again that there's not any real pockets of air or anything like that can get through, or apples pop through. So you're going to kind of, at the end, what I did on Friday, and I'll show you here, is kind of just pinch the, just the little circles of crust together. So it really does make a nice, crust. I say it like that because I wasn't sure how this was really going to work out. I saw, like I said, the video a couple weeks and I thought, well, that looks like a good idea, but sometimes you see stuff on videos or on a picture somewhere and you're like, wow, that looks like a great idea. And then I try it and I'm like, okay, clearly I'm not skilled to do that. Well, I mean, this actually wasn't that hard. So that's why I'm sharing it with you. There's that. Roll these out. I think my son is getting a little impatient. I hear him upstairs. There we go. This smells so good. I can't wait to try this. There we go. And it's nice because you'll see some of your bottom layer crust, and you're going to just kind of pinch them like a real pie crust, you know? Pinch the top with the bottom. You can obviously, if you want, roll your dough, your cinnamon rolls out a little bit thinner if you want. But I just, like I said, you see here that I'm only going over it a few times to make kind of a shape like this. Just stretch out the dough a little bit. Just so that, like I say, it'll go all the way around. So I've done all the way around with my dough. Now I just have to fill in the center. I would love to hear if anybody has ever tried something similar to this with either with apple pie or with another type of a recipe. Another type of pie, perhaps. I just, you know, it's funny, I never thought of using cinnamon rolls as a dough, but, you know, truthfully, it makes me think of what other kind of pies can I make now? Because, like I said, my husband actually, he's not a real sweets person, and so he prefers a pie over a cake any day. I don't fall into that category. I'll take anything coated in icing before I will take a pie necessarily. I do like pie, but I love cake. So he always like, why don't you ever make homemade pies? You always like to make, you know, like iced desserts and stuff. And I tell him, I'm like, you know, because the crust always makes me so nervous. Because sometimes it'll turn out great for me and sometimes it doesn't. And I'm so happy when I found this. I thought, great, because in that way the crust hopefully shouldn't give me as many issues. Oh good, this is gonna work out perfectly. This seems to be just going over it about 3 or 4 times is all it really took. And I've got this last one to fill this last little hole here. There we go. Now I'm going to kind of push this down right here just to kind of make sure everything is sealed. It looked like it sealed pretty well the first time I did it here. So, good. I'll bring this to the camera so you can see, but I'm not seeing any real gaps there. Looks nice. Check the ingredients here. So, yeah, so then we poured our apples in. We now put our top layer of our cinnamon roll sheet on top. Pinch the sides that have any holes in it. And then, now the recipe on the blog, you'll see it says you cover with aluminum foil before you go ahead and put it in the oven. I did that on Friday, so you can go ahead and do that if you want to. And then after it's baked, what you're gonna do is, like I said, anywhere from 30 minutes, or I'm sorry, from 40 minutes to 50 minutes. Mine was probably about 45. Once that's done, you're gonna let it cool for about 30 minutes or so. And then you're gonna drizzle your icing. I'm sure you've seen these before. You get 2 containers because you bought 2 of the cinnamon rolls. You're gonna drizzle your icing on top. So I will pull this closer so you can see a close-up of the pie. This is what it looks like right before I'm going to put it in the oven. As you can see, I used all the same sides, so it just looked a little bit more uniform because 8 of the sides of the cinnamon rolls had, you know, the larger chunks of cinnamon. And I like to just have it a little more uniform looking because then they all had the smaller pieces of cinnamon in it. So then it just looks a little bit more consistent. So I will put that in the oven, and in the meantime, I'm going to grab my taste tester and have him try our finished version. So I'll be right back. Is my taste tester ready? Come on down, taste tester. Yeah, buddy. Why? Okay, well, I'm sorry that happened. Oh, okay. Just a minute, sweetie. Thank you. Okay, let me grab you a chair, buddy. All right, let's see if I knock my camera down or not.
You know how I turned into a pony at the floor? I used the egg to put it on
Okay.
there.
Thank you, buddy. Can you grab the chair, Ian, so then people can come see you?
Okay. What chair? Oh, right here.
Yeah.
What my
Sorry if I lose you.
what my slip? What the slipper?
Yeah. Okay, bring it on over. Bring it on over.
This one.
Yeah, just bring it over, sweetie. Let me show everybody our finished version. Oh, let me pick it up. I don't want to scrape the floor. See the camera here? It's okay. All right, stand here. I'll get it, buddy. You can just stand here. Stand here so people can see you. You're going to get ready to try your cinnamon roll apple pie. Can you look in there and say good morning?
Good morning.
Okay, so let me grab the finish. Do you want to show our finished pie? Okay, okay, just a second. We're gonna grab our
Can I
pie.
come too?
Or it's right here, it's right here, it's right here. Okay, so let me preface this by saying I used more icing. That's probably what's necessary, but I did it because we like icing. So this is the finished. Smell good? Yeah, I know you're hungry.
Can I try?
You're gonna try it right now. So this was the finished version I made. I just pulled it out of the oven this morning, and after it cools, you're supposed to.
Delicious.
Okay, well, good. You get to try some now. After it cooled is when you put your icing on top. Okay, let me cut you. I'm not gonna cut you a huge piece just yet. I'll cut you a piece so you can try it. Let me get this cut for you. You stay there so people can see you. You want to say hi to anybody?
Hi, Nana.
Hey.
Can I say hi, Nana, Mom?
Sure. You can still watch this.
Hi, Nana.
I'll cut you a small piece here. Get your plate. What are you gonna tell me? Anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our apple pies really send me in. Icing went all over the top and all over the bottom.
That's right. Ooh, it looks good, Ian.
Can I try it now?
Yeah, just a second, I'm coming. I got you a baby piece here. Just a little piece here, so you can just try it. So I cut Ian just a tiny little piece here. You can see. Let me get you a little fork. See what you think. Okay, stand there and tell everybody. Let me get in here. Stand in here and let's tell everybody. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let me get down here so people can see me. Let me get you a piece of this. You probably want some with the icing on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here.
Mama.
Okay, taste it. Chew it and swallow and tell everybody what you think. It smells good. Do you like it? Do you eat this for breakfast, don't you? Yeah? All right, well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video on a cinnamon roll apple pie. Again, stay tuned. I'm going to try to share my pumpkin cheesecake here in the next week, so it's just in time for Thanksgiving for you. In the meantime, I hope you head over to Freebie Finding Mom and leave your comments. Let us know what you think about this recipe and if you're willing to try it or if you've already tried it before. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye. You want to say bye?
Bye.
Bye.